Okay. This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Sam Marshall. This show is live and broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. DA leader Helen Zille made a surprise and what many describe a shocking announcement about her future. We have the DA in studio a little bit later. We follow the developing story of the xenophobic attacks, which has now spread to other parts of the country. And we close the show with the Dacha debate. But first, let's get the day's news with Anine Bernal.
Good morning, I'm Anine Bernal. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. Musi Maimane says he could be standing for the position of DA party leader. The party extended the nomination deadline for top leadership positions. This after Helen Zille announced her resignation yesterday. Zille said she will not be available for re-election at the party's elective Congress, but will complete her term as Premier. The official opposition will elect a new leadership in Port Elizabeth on the 9th of May. The parliamentary leader says he will now consult with structures before making himself available.
It's something I'm considering, but that consideration certainly does not come. It's not an easy one. It's not a straightforward one. This is a massive commitment, and I certainly have to discuss, obviously, with family, with the people of the DA, with the various structures, and if I felt confident enough, I'd have to think about it deeply. But at this stage, I'm not in any position to make that decision. Still trying to negotiate and think through what happened yesterday.
About 5 foreign-owned shops were set alight and looted in Durban townships overnight. eThekwini Metro Police say there have been reports of attacks in Umlazi, KwaMashu, Inanda and Siyanda. The KwaMashu Men's Hostel north of Durban is under police lockdown following violent clashes between residents and police. Violence flared after police tried to rescue foreign nationals who had barricaded themselves inside their stores. Police had to use tear gas and rubber bullets to keep locals from attacking a Somali shop. 2 men are due in court today in the latest cases of vandalizing statues. The statues of Mahatma Gandhi and Paul Kruger are the most recent to be targeted. A 21-year-old man was arrested on Saturday after allegedly vandalizing the Gandhi statue in central Johannesburg. In Pretoria's Church Square, another was arrested yesterday for allegedly painting the statue of Paul Kruger, the second such incident in 2 weeks. Sudan begins voting today in an election boycotted by the country's main opposition parties, where President Omar Hassan al-Bashir looks set to extend more than 24 years in power. The presidential and parliamentary elections are the first since Sudan split with the South in 2011. The boycotting opposition parties say a clampdown on the opposition, media and civil society has created an impossible environment to run against Bashir. The polls will be held up to Wednesday. Hillary Clinton has extended months of speculation by announcing she has entered the race to win control of the White House in 2016. She is pledged to champion the aspirations of ordinary Americans. The former Secretary of State, Senator and First Lady has already hit the campaign trail, heading to the state of Iowa, where early party elections take place. And militants claiming loyalty to Islamic State are said to be responsible for both attacks in Libya this morning. A bomb exploded at the Moroccan embassy, causing some damage but not leaving anyone hurt. The attack came hours after gunmen attacked South Korea's mission in Tripoli. Remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Sam, over to you.
Thanks, Anine. Now, so far, 17 people have been arrested in connection in xenophobic hotspots. Also, 7 people have lost their lives since the violence started in Isipingo. Joining us now from our Durban studio, we're joined by the Chief Executive Officer of the KwaZulu-Natal Refugee Council, Bruti Amisi. Bruti, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us here on Newsroom. What is the current situation in KwaZulu-Natal?
Good morning. The situation, as you know, is not good. children are being displaced, women are being displaced, people are being killed. So we are very, very desperate.
We've seen remarks over the past weekend, not only by the President of South Africa, the Honourable Jacob Zuma. We've seen Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba. The President, in his speech, talked about say that hardship is no excuse. The Minister of Home Affairs talking about leadership being more responsible.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay, let me start that question again for you. We've seen lots of comments from leaders over the past weekend, including our President Jacob Zuma. We've seen the Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba coming out talking about responsible leadership. We've seen the Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini backtracking on statements made a little bit earlier. What is the role of leadership in curbing these xenophobic attacks?
Yeah, the role of the leadership in this situation, like any other difficult situation, is to give direction, is to give official position so that the masses, so that we as individuals and the communities can know what is taking place, what the leader think about what's taking place, and the solutions to the challenges that we are facing.
Has enough been done? We've seen the security delegation headed by State Security Minister David Matlobo going to KZN along with the Premier and a couple of very high-profile dignitaries going to assess the situation. What would you like that assessment to take consideration of while they're in KZN considering the xenophobic violence?
We are very grateful for what is taking place now from the leadership. We are also thankful to the people of South Africa and the government for welcoming us. So what is taking place now will definitely put an end on what happened, on how it happened, and how should we move forward.
Many can argue that since 2008, when we saw those harrowing pictures, heard the horrifying stories of many Africans that are living in South Africa, or I should say many foreigners living in South Africa, that not a lot was done since 2008. And this has been bubbling under since 2008. And that we're now sitting with a situation that's already it's caught fire and it's about to explode.
Yeah, I don't think that nothing has been made since 2008, because most of the work which was taking place and is still going on behind the scenes. And most of the time, of course, these positive initiatives and outcomes, they are not covered by the media. We, as a migrant community and the KwaZulu-Natal Refugee Council in particular, we have been very active and remain active in the townships. We went to Kwamashu, we went to Katomena, Katocrest, Inanda, and you name it, in order to bring South Africans and non-South Africans together. And we do that in a partnership with eThekwini municipality, the office of the mayor, CPF, the SAPS, and the Metropolis. So things are taking place even though they are not often covered by the media.
So we could argue that a lot of those things that, as you claim, have been taking place have been failing, that a lot of the xenophobic violence we're seeing now that's spreading from townships overnight, 5 shops, more people hurt. One of the 2 Somali shop owners have passed this weekend after being petrol bombed, that a lot of your interventions have been failing.
I will disagree with you that they are failing, but I concur with whoever will contend that indeed we haven't met the expected results. So our outcome are still below our expectations. So what we need is to multiply efforts, is to bring everybody on board, to raise the funds so that we can meet the expectations of our people and the vision of the council and the eThekwini municipality and the other stakeholders.
Obviously, integration is part of that vision, but Maybe let's backtrack very, very quickly. What were some of the steps that you, along with the eThekwini municipality, local police, that you've tried to put on the ground that you're saying that more effort needs to be done? What were some of those steps that, and also as you claim, the media didn't cover?
Yes, we do social cohesions. We do social cohesion initiatives and meetings. We do that in Pietermaritzburg. We do that across the province. That is bringing people from different backgrounds, the host and the guest community together, so that while they are discussing around what happened, they can focus on the way forward.
Just a quick reaction. One final question. We've run out of time, but there's cause to reinforce the police on the ground in KZN. Do you concur with that reaction? Is that not maybe the end result of these failed interventions?
Yes, we need more people in uniform on the ground, so that they can bring the situation under control. But it doesn't mean that we fail or we are failing. It only means that we need more people on the ground in order to discourage opportunistic people who want to take advantage of what's taking place. Because, as I said, most of our work have prevented a lot of outbreaks, but they were not covered.
So we're going to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us from our Durban studios. That's the Chief Executive Officer of the KZN Refugee Council, Bruti Amisi, talking to us. Now, eThekwini Metro Police say about 5 shops owned by foreign nationals were set alight and several others looted in townships in and around Durban last night. There's also been reports of attacks in Umlazi, KwaMashu, Inanda and Sianda. The KwaMashu Men's Hostel north of Durban is under lockdown following violent clashes between residents and police. Violence flared after officials tried to rescue foreign nationals who had barricaded themselves inside their stores. Police had to use tear gas and rubber bullets to keep locals from attacking a Somali shop. Now, in Umlazi, south of Durban, foreigners had to be freed from a local church which came under attack. Meanwhile, Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini has called on his subjects to stop the attacks on foreign nationals. It's the first time the king has spoken out since the violence broke out. Locals claim they were heeding his call when they attacked the foreigners. The king has denied this.
Weeks of vicious and deadly attacks on foreigners and intervention from the Zulu King. He denies ever saying all foreigners must be deported. He insists he only referred to those illegally in the country.
The king advised that this must stop and that he did not command any violence and that if he had, this place would be in ashes. He said there is no need for this violence as the people have lived together.
Hundreds of children have been affected by the violence. At this camp alone, there are more than 150. With schools reopening tomorrow, many won't be in class. Parents say they fear for their safety. She says she's worried that her children will not be able to go to school because of the situation in the communities. She fears they may be attacked at school. The Zimbabwean Consul General paid a visit to the camp. There are more than 700 Zimbabweans sheltered here.
It's very unfortunate that the situation has become this bad, but one hopes that with the cooperation between ourselves and the government of South Africa, we will manage to take people out of this predicament. A number of them, in my discussions with them, have indicated that they are willing to go back to Zimbabwe.
For safety, the camp has now been fenced and is under permanent police guard. Additional marquees and ablution facilities have been set up. On Saturday, the president assigned security cluster ministers to work with the provincial government to stem the violence. I am Mhlongo, SABC News, Chatsworth.
Xenophobic attacks have also spread to the northwest province. Foreign nationals have also been caught in the crossfire in Lierig near Sun City in Rustenburg. Residents have been rioting in protest against mining royalties that they say have not been forthcoming.
Mayhem and destruction, barricaded roads, foreign shop owners, complete outsiders to the dispute paying the price. Shops were attacked, looted, and some set alight. Owners desperate to save their supplies.
I get a little chance to take out my stock. But the most shops, they are burned and they're robbed.
We decided to move some of stock because we think this place are not so safe.
A large police contingent was deployed.
We have established a sector approach that every street we have placed vehicles. We have got nyalas, we've got chopper in the air so that we can see who are planning. We don't want any groupings. And we are saying to the community of Liedach and community in general, please, don't infringe the rights of others.
But the community says they won't stop, insisting to know what happened to their money.
Those companies, they don't also benefit the community. There's no one from the community who's working there. We don't even know where are they, and then we don't know the directors of those companies. So now we've got a problem with that thing.
Engage all the stakeholders to try to find a way of resolving the issues and identifying the task team. And issues identified will be forwarded to the relevant stakeholders.
Police continue to be on high alert in the area. Solufelo Matibedi, SABC News, Liedach, near Sun City.
Now, xenophobic attacks is taking its toll and has started to affect other sectors of society. A private school and educational centre offering English classes and lessons to foreign students from non-English speaking African countries has been affected by the new wave of anti-immigrants and xenophobic attacks. Both teachers and students at the school have received threatening xenophobic messages during the Easter weekend break. For the latest at the school, we are joined from Pretoria studio by the principal, Michelle Mardones. Michelle, thank you very much for joining us here on Newsroom. What is the current situation at the school?
Sam, at the moment, we still have very low attendance. Many of our students we have not seen in over a week now. I've heard from classmates who are attending that these students have actually barricaded themselves into their flats and are too afraid to come out.
Michelle, these threats, have they only been against your foreign students? Have it been against any of the teachers, yourselves?
Sam, at this stage, no. It's been mostly the students who've been at the brunt of these threats. However, the story covered by the Pretoria News last week did open us up to some criticism by South Africans who state that, South Africans, there are roughly 200,000 South Africans who get turned away from local universities every year, while we have, foreign nationals waiting to enter university. So it did seem to generate, a little bit of animosity there.
As we sit and conducting this interview, as we speak, are you or do you feel that your person is being threatened?
Sam, I cannot say, no. I definitely, am aware of the fact that everyone now knows that we have roughly 200 foreign nationals in attendance who hope to become proficient in English and eventually integrate into universities both here and abroad. So, if the situation worsens and tension increases, then I think it really could present a problem.
Now, the right to education is enshrined in our Constitution. Have you reported these threats to the police, and what is that conversation, the dialogue between you and the police?
I have not engaged with the police on this matter, simply because I haven't had a positive response in previous dealings with the police and foreign students. But I did try to engage with the Department of Social Services, who actually have an immigration unit who specifically deals with such matters. However, they weren't particularly interested in these threats that students were receiving.
What was the response from both the police and the department?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
You're saying that these conversations and trying to engage in this conversation with the police and the department was unsuccessful. I just want to understand the nature of the conversation. What was it? Were they just not interested?
I brought this to the attention on Tuesday, just after the Easter weekend, and it seems that many individuals within the department did not report to work or were on leave, in fact. And I then eventually got the name of an individual I was told would be the right person to speak to. She was in a meeting at the time. I did say to her that the situation, was critical, it was dire, and that it was urgent that I spoke to her. She actually just cut the conversation short, cut my call. I then sent her a lengthy SMS, but heard nothing beyond that.
You're obviously, Michelle, as the principal of the school, engaging with some of your students.
Yes.
I don't know if you've taken this conversation onto the streets, but what is the feedback you've been getting from your students? I mean, you said at the beginning of the conversation that a lot of them have started staying away from school. I can only affect that it affects the business and the running of the school.
It does. Obviously, taking 2 weeks out of the curriculum is problematic. If you've got less than 50% attendance, it makes it very difficult to move forward, with the curriculum as such. So we're just trying to sort of tide over this time to see what happens and hopefully wait for things to settle. But the feedback from the students is that they are afraid. They were told, most of them are warned before they come to South Africa that it is dangerous here. And they're told, in fact, that South Africans don't like foreigners. So many of them have told me that they do have their bags packed and that if the situation worsens, they are ready to leave South Africa.
What's the contingency plan at the school? How long do you estimate that things will be business unusual?
It's difficult to tell. At this stage, attendance today has improved as opposed to what it was last week. So it seems as if students are returning. They are talking to each other. Many of them have said that they think that those threatening SMSs were possibly just a hoax. Be that as it may, one cannot ignore such threats.
Michelle, we're going to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us from our Pretoria studio. That's Michelle Madonis talking to us about her school that's been directly affected by xenophobic threats to the students, who are mostly foreign nationals. Now, let's just take a look at your tweets. Please remember to send us your views on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Let's read from our monitor. It comes from Munya Gova, who says, why isn't Zwelithini coming out to denounce the violence? And in actual fact, the king has distanced himself from reports over this weekend where he claims that comments made by him was misinterpreted by the media. And in actual fact, he was saying that he wasn't talking about all foreign nationals. He was only talking about those that are illegally here in the country. Andrew Asen Wamadi, who says, hashtag Zwelithini may have to be reminded that he reigns over a people and not particularly over South Africa. He has no right about who stays in South Africa. Also a comment from Andrew related to comments made by the king. Then we're running something, as you can see, these shocking visuals to the left and to the right, of course, protest action. That's from E24, hashtag Mlazi, hashtag Durban, hashtag South Africa. That's Atekati who's saying, and I think it's really just related to the pictures. These are just some of the pictures that's coming through on Twitter. Lendani Ndlovu who's saying One Africa for all Africans, and it also carries the hashtag xenophobia with the hashtag patriotism, Samunye, and we are one. And South Africa, please don't confuse. That's Lendani's message this morning. Okay. That's some of your tweets coming in. And of course, let's talk about today's tweet. And it comes from a very famous South African. He's also related to a very famous soccer player. He's a model and everything else. It comes from Maps Mpunyane, and he says, it's survival of the fittest, not survival of the most entitled. Everyone deserves to make an honest living, and that's hashtag xenophobic SA. Okay. So let's now take a look at the front pages from around the globe. We start in Europe with the Times, and that story is Hillary Clinton ended years of speculation last night, announcing that she would run to become US president because everyday Americans need a champion, she announced. And then moving to, we're still staying in the US, the Washington Post says, leads with Hillary Clinton's big announcement. Clinton entered the presidential race on Sunday, saying she wants to fight for the economic futures of regular people and ending years of speculation about whether she would redeem the disappointment of a failed 2008 attempt to become the country's first female commander-in-chief. And of course, she lost to Barack Obama. And in Jerusalem, the Jerusalem Post reports that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his finance minister designate Kulanu leader Moshe Kalan met for 3 hours yesterday in efforts to work out their differences and enable the formation of a new government. Okay, now let's take a look at what's happening in and around the country. We start in Johannesburg, where Czech fugitive Radovan Krejcir and 7 others are expected to appear in the South Gauteng High Court, sitting in the Palm Ridge on charges of conspiracy to kill a police officer and forensic investigator. Still in Johannesburg, 2 people accused of killing a man and dumping his body in the boot of a car at Montecasino in 2013 are also expected to appear in the South Gauteng High Court, sitting in Palm Ridge today. And in KZN, a Somali national suspected of shooting dead a South African woman last week in Isipingo, south of Durban, is expected to appear in court today. Okay, hundreds of streaming fireworks lit up the night sky over the Greek islands of Chios yesterday, but the celebration is certainly not for the faint-hearted. Each year, the community lights up fireworks in a mock war between the 2 rival churches, a Greek Orthodox Easter celebration. The church that gets the most hits at the end of the night loses the mock war. The community is certainly not letting Greece's tough economic times stop them from having a little fun. Okay, that's where we leave it for now. Let's take an ad break. You're watching Newsroom.
Catch all these and more every day on Sports Live at 8:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. Musi Maimane says he could be standing for the position of DA party leader. The party has extended the nomination deadline for top leadership positions. This after Helen Zille announced she will not be available for re-election at the party's elective Congress, but will complete her term as Premier. The parliamentary leader says he will now consult with structures before making himself available. About 5 foreign-owned shops were set alight and looted in Durban townships overnight. eThekwini Metro Police say there have been reports of attacks in Umlazi, KwaMashu, Inanda and Siyanda. The KwaMashu Men's Hostel north of Durban is under police lockdown following violent clashes between residents and police. 2 men are due in court today in the latest cases of vandalizing statues. The statues of Mahatma Gandhi and Paul Kruger were the most recent to be targeted. A 21-year-old man was arrested on Saturday after allegedly vandalizing the Gandhi statue in central Johannesburg. In Pretoria's Church Square, another was arrested yesterday for allegedly painting the statue of Paul Kruger, the second such incident in 2 weeks. Remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Sam, back to you.
Thanks, Nadine. Now, the Democratic Alliance has called for a debate in Parliament on the issues of statues in the country. In a recent incident, a statue of a Portuguese poet, Fernando Pessoa, was defaced in Durban. EFF's party organizer, Philip Mlongo, has denied that members of the party were responsible for the defacing of the Portuguese poet. In a separate incident, a 21-year-old was arrested on Saturday for allegedly vandalizing the statue of Mahatma Gandhi in Gandhi Square, central Johannesburg. DA Chief Whip John Steenhuisen says the defacing of statues is now going to advance transformation in South Africa. In our studio now, we're joined today by the Democratic Alliance's Gauteng Provincial Chair and Spokesperson on Arts and Culture, Solly Msamanga. Solly, thank you very much for joining us here in Newsroom.
Thank you, and good morning to you, Sam, and to the viewers of South Africa.
Before we delve into some of the reasons behind the defacings, and we've heard so many people talk about it, relatively up to now, the DA has been very, very quiet about this issue. And now it's talking about a debate in Parliament. We've heard John Steenhuisen come out talking about it. Why have you been so quiet?
Well, we haven't really been quiet. We have been saying, for one, actually in last year's debate, did raise the issue of how do we incorporate, both aspects of history, the ones that the ruling party wants to tell and the one that is there. Because you really cannot tell one part of history. You need to tell history in totality. You need to say what was and what is and what is to be. And one of the things that we have been proposing is why we're not having, another statue erected next to these statues of the people that we want to have there to tell a different story of history. This then will lead to a perpetual conversation that can be taking place, or debate. And that's what we need to have from generation to generation to generation. That's what we've been saying as the Democratic Alliance. We've been saying that you don't wipe one part of history to tell another, because then, you're telling a very skewed story.
There's been a lot of debate about how that story should be told, because one train of thought or one intellectual discussion, and we've seen with the removal of Cecil John Rhodes, that's saying this is a new democracy that should be reflecting our ideals, the current environment we're in, that there is a place for this history, but it shouldn't be in public. It should be somewhere in a museum.
Well, I mean, if you take that line of thought, then I would say to you, shouldn't we be saying the same about the Craddock Four? Shouldn't we be saying the same about Nelson Mandela? Should we even be having statues to start with? I'm saying they should be there. They played a significant role of South Africa as it is. Irrespective of it having been bad, irrespective of it having been good, they played a major role. And we need to have a conversation, and we need to open it up. It is an emotive issue. We need to acknowledge that. But then, in acknowledging it, it doesn't mean that we then now have to be selective in how we're telling it. We need to tell it in its entirety, and we need to have the statues out there. We need to have them put up where they are, or remaining where they are, and we need to erect those new ones that will tell a different side. And, once you start taking them off, as Nelson Mandela rightly said, when we were engaging in the 1994 World Cup, you don't wipe somebody else's culture, history, in order to tell your own or in order to make yours better. Because if we do that, we are doing exactly what the apartheid government was doing.
Sally, there's a debate raging, and I think maybe we need to enter into that debate as well. You've touched on the fact that history needs to be reflective, and the current environment needs to be reflective. The thing that we're missing here, or maybe we're not missing, is that a lot of these things have been started by born-frees, people who are, as we classify them, politically a-neutral. They don't come from a perspective. They have a problem. If you look at the Rhodes statue, those are university students who've had an issue with transformation at that school. How do we engage them? Because these are the people, unlike you and I, we're a little bit older, but these are youngsters that have a problem with these statues that they say reflects a bad part of our history.
But you see, Sam, that's the problem right there. Are we letting history to be told in its entirety, or are we letting, just aspects of it? Let's take the horse statue, for instance. Do people really understand what that means? It has nothing to do with apartheid. It only meant what happened during the Anglo-Boer War and how those horses, or the celebration of the horses that carried men and women, and how we need to be telling that story. We need to make sure that our young people understand that. Our young people understand the history, because anybody who doesn't know their history is bound to repeat its mistakes. So we need to say this is actually what happened, and this is the story that leads to where we are today. But if we're not telling it that way, and we are only saying history of South Africa starts with the ANC, when ANC was born, then, you know, we're telling a very skewed picture.
I was meant to start this conversation by asking you about something that's very topical, and it comes from your own leadership. But I got a little bit sidetracked in terms of the statue conversation. But let's get back to the big story. Your leader announcing that she will not be standing for re-election has been met, including by Mmusi Maimane, who's the DA leader in Parliament, by surprise. Everybody is surprised.
Yeah, well...
Are you surprised?
Yes. We were surprised at the timing of it. We're not surprised that it is coming or it's here. We knew that at some point Helen would step down. She did.
But you didn't know that she was going to make that announcement?
We didn't know that she was going to make that announcement yesterday when she called the leadership into the venue and informed them of.
So at the same time when she broke it to the rest of the country and the world, you found out?
No, some of us did know, because there was a conversation of the executive before to inform the executive of what she had decided to do. And yeah, there were people who were saying that she should reconsider that decision, and maybe we should look into the 2017 as being her time to step down. And she said, well, she had set a 10-year term for herself, and she's happy with the 8 years that she's actually done, and she's done relatively well, and she wants to step down and hand over to somebody before we get on to the 2019 project.
So, Solly, we've run out of time, but I've got to ask you this question because it begs the question. If you knew about the fact that Helen was going to step down, but Mmusi Maimane didn't know, because he acted in surprise when he was asked the question, what does that say about the level of dialogue within the party, and also what are we going to expect now as there's an internal battle for the leadership?
Okay, let me correct something. All of us didn't know until we were called into the meeting.
Okay.
So the surprise, all of us were surprised when we were in the meeting.
When it was announced?
When it was announced that it was going to be like now, we were all surprised. We knew that it was going to happen. What we didn't know, it was going to happen this soon. That's why I'm saying the timing of it was a bit of a surprise to all of us.
Okay, so we know that potentially Mmusi Maimane will throw his hat in. Anybody else that you could share with us?
Well, there's conversations that are now starting in Gauteng, in the Western Cape, in KZN, across the provinces. There's conversations that are taking place in terms of who should be the next person. Some people are saying maybe John Moody should be standing. There's people who are saying
because he's put his hand up.
He's been asked to put his hand up. Or will he put his hand up? It's another matter altogether. I think knowing John, he will want to go and consult the structures. Athol, is also a seasoned politician that has been put up as well. And I know these are people that will also want to consult, the structures to say, well, is it the time that, I should be putting my hand up? And there are young people as well, Kumera Mulifo, Ghana Makashule. Those are young people that are coming up that are also, can put up their names.
Sally, we've run horribly out of time, but thank you very much for joining us. That's the Democratic Alliance Gauteng Provincial Chair and Spokesperson on Arts and Culture, Sally Msimanga, talking to us about the statues and the shock announcement by the DA leader, Helen Zille, that she won't be up for re-election. Now, let's just take a look at your tweets. Please remember to send us your views on Twitter, and that's at Newsroom. Let's go. Belinda Mokanda at #statue says, some people are still living in houses that were built during oppression. They should be broke down as well. It's a symbol of the past. Let's take a look at some of your other comments now. This is from #BTTC15. At Z says, why was the Gandhi statue vandalized? Now, really like these people. And of course, that's in reaction to over the past weekend, the statues being defaced. #statue debate says, by the way, who said Gandhi is our hero? He clearly isn't a hero for the African majority. He will be celebrated in India. And that was our last tweet, of course. Now let's take a look at your tweet of the day. It says, today's picture of the day comes from Pastor Lisa, captioned, "This xenophobia in South Africa is not okay. Check what they did in KwaMashu." Now, of course, let's take a look at your Facebook pages today, and this is what's happening on Facebook. Independent political analyst Abdul Wahid Patel says there is nothing surprising about Democratic Alliance Halinzala's decision to step down ahead of the re-elections on the 9th of May. Then Zimbabwe's Consul General in South Africa, Henry Mukunu says diplomatic ties between South Africa and Zimbabwe will not be affected by the ongoing xenophobic attacks. And Hillary Clinton has launched her second bid to become the first female president in the United States, confirming 2 years of speculation that she would make a run for the White House. You can find all of these stories and more on our Newsroom Facebook page, or visit SABC website at www.sabc.co.za/news. We take a break here on Newsroom. You don't go anywhere.
Media Monitor. The title says it all.
We do have a dilemma here because Lesotho is a sovereign country. I don't think it is the obligation of South Africa's media to even tell the people of Lesotho what's going on in Lesotho.
Join our panel of experts as they unpack and monitor all the leading and breaking news stories making waves in the print and social media platforms. That's Media Monitor with me, Alicia Jali.
Sundays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News channel.
You're watching Newsroom. Thank you for choosing to stay with us. Over the weekend, attacks on foreign nationals from Umlazi, south of Durban, to KwaMashu in the north. Last night, police clashed with residents as they tried to rescue foreign nationals who had barricaded themselves inside their stores. Now, SABC reporter Ayanda Mshlongo was out at KwaMashu all night, and she joins us from our studio. Ayanda, good morning. Give us an update on the situation in Durban as you were, for most of the night, at the KwaMashu hostel.
Well, I can tell you first, very good morning to you, Sam. The situation in KwaMashu is extremely volatile. In fact, it came as a surprise or rather a shock because during the day yesterday, we had actually thought that things were calmer after we seen those incidents and the attacks at Umlazi. There were 1 or 2 attacks that we had been reporting on over the weekend at KwaMashu, but the violence that we saw last night it was unexpected, really, and I think it caught everybody off guard. A lot of the police deployment as well had in the past days been deployed down in the suburbs south of Durban, and a lot of those police officers then having to be called up to go and assist in KwaMashu. And what happened in KwaMashu yesterday is, of course, when those attacks are spread, people attacked stores belonging to foreign nationals. It started off at the KwaMashu men's hostel, an area, of course, that is very notorious for crime. And I know we've been reporting on KwaMashu over the past years, in fact. A lot of foreign nationals had stored, the majority of stores inside the hostel area, beg your pardon, were being run by foreign nationals, mostly Somalis. The community then around 5 o'clock, we understand the attacks then started. They surrounded those stores, attacked foreigners. But the biggest standoff was just at the entrance of KwaMashu, when the police tried. Basically what the police were trying to do was just to protect the foreigners, or to try and extricate the foreigners who had barricaded themselves inside one of the stores. You had the community wanting to advance, and then they came head to head with the police. Police had to use everything in their power, all their resources, from tear gas, the water cannons, to try and keep the community away. They too came under attack, and this was also confirmed by local leaders that we were with at the scene. We were with with the chairperson of the CPF in KwaMashu, Mr. Khumalo, and he too, he tried the best as he could to try and speak to the community, but they would hear none of it. And all efforts, so what eventually happened is that we could even hear the police calling for backup as the situation really was getting more intense. Stones were being thrown at the police. Mr. Khumalo also confirming to us that the police were even shot at. There are flats around the area where we were. So from the top of those buildings, the community was shooting down at the police, which made the area, in fact, very difficult for even police. At one point, they even retracted to try and wait for backup. And then once backup had arrived, they then slowly moved back in. All traffic and people that were wanting to enter the KwaMashu hostel were not allowed to do so. At that time, Sam, there were also reports of foreigners and locals that had been injured deep inside the hostel. Ambulances had to be turned away because it was not safe for them, and police were thin on the ground, so they could not escort those ambulances. And while we were at KwaMashu, we then heard reports that the foreigners were being attacked in Isianda, in Lindelani, moving up north to townships of Inanda, Amawoti. Police trying as much as they can to try and attend to those situations. Majority of police, of course, were at KwaMashu, and then as the situation sort of calmed down a little bit, they were then sent out to try and assist in the other areas. And as soon as they left, the situation then would intensify again at KwaMashu. The foreign nationals then later on had to rely on private security guards to come in and protect them.
Ayanda, thank you for that very detailed update from KwaMashu. And of course, Ayanda was outside the hostels, as you heard, in the KwaMashu hostels, where police had to deal with a situation where foreigners were barricaded inside the hostels. And of course, we'll keep on developing that story here on Channel 404 and give you the latest. Now, the recent roundtable discussions on the use of cannabis in South Africa generated a robust debate on the safety and dangers of cannabis use in the country. The two-day discussion was hosted by the Department of Social Development in partnership with the Central Drug Authority. We here at Newsroom have been involved with this #Dacha debate, and to tell us what was discussed and what the way forward might be on the use of cannabis, we are joined in studio by the Central Drug Authority's Deputy Chairperson, Dr. David Bayeva. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us here in Newsroom.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Sam.
The fact that before we get into what was actually discussed, I just want to talk about what this discussion means. The fact that people from different opinions are sitting around the table talking about what has become a very contentious issue around the use. There's the medical use, the legal issues around cannabis. Is this a good step forward?
Absolutely. I think that it was imperative that we started this debate. The Central Drug Authority is mandated in terms of the Act to look at all of these issues and to advise the Minister and Parliament, particularly in reference to the fact that we have a new innovation bill, the Medical Innovation Bill, that is coming before Parliament. It was necessary for us to then form an intelligent discussion venue for this debate. And that was the whole purpose of the round table. We wanted to get, removing all of the emotions, some of the scientific evidence that is available as to whether it should be allowed or whether it shouldn't be allowed, particularly for medicinal purposes in the initial stages, because that is what is of concern at the present moment.
Very quickly, some of the issues that came up. Give us an overview.
Well, one of the things that we recognized is that at the end of the day, what we are there about is to try and heal patients, and we don't want to deny them of a privilege if there is any value using medicinal properties of the cannabis in order to help them in their condition. What we need to make sure is that what we are advising then is safe and effective and is going to be something that can be used quite safely right across the entire spectrum. We're also very concerned about the knock-on effect that it might have, particularly with our youth, and we need to protect our youth as well. The Constitution prescribes that we need to look at it from a medicinal point of view in terms of making it a right for people who need treatment, but at the same time that we need to protect our society. So we need to weigh up the two sides in particular. Also, at the same time, there are economic considerations that we can take into account and take into effect, which would also then impact on the use. And more importantly, what we need to do is we need to align ourselves with what is happening internationally and learn from the best practices that we can derive from other countries that have already made the steps.
Doctor, we've got 30 seconds left. Very quickly, from a CDA perspective, what do you believe should be the way forward?
Well, at the moment, what we are doing is we are taking all the evidence. We are then going to then look at it and analyse it very, very carefully and then make a recommendation to Parliament. What is important is that there are so many complex issues that have to be looked at that we can't deal with it in isolation. We have to look at it in its total complexity.
Doctor, we're going to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us, and we'll touch on this issue with time permitting more. That is Dr. David Bayeva, who's from the Central Drug Authorities. He's the Deputy Chairperson, talking to us about a two-day discussion that was hosted by the Department of Social Development. Well, we've come to the end of our program here on Newsroom, and of course we are broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday between 9 and 10 a.m. We also stream live on YouTube at that time, and the show's available on demand on the YouTube channel. We love to interact and enjoy your contributions and opinions. This is SABC's News. You've been watching the Newsroom from us.